Over 105,000 Alaskans go hungry or are unsure of where their next meal will come from. This includes veterans, children, senior citizens, and the working poor. I'm here to talk to you about the importance of donating food to a food bank and also the importance of volunteering at a homeless shelter. Just a single dollar can provide 3 to 5 meals for a family in need, and 100% of the donation a person gives to the Food Bank of Alaska, as well as other food banks in the rest of the U.S., go directly towards providing a meal for a person in need. Donating food and helping out in a homeless shelter can go a long way. It can make a person reevaluate their life a little bit. In our society today, we hear about people who can't afford meals, but then we also hear about people who complain because they can't afford the newest iPhone or then it's too expensive. When you're working in a food bank or in a homeless shelter, you see the people who are unsure of where their next meal is coming from or if they have a place to stay for the night. The people volunteering, for the most part, don't have to worry about that. We take those things for granted, that we know where our next meal is coming from, and also that we have a shelter to call home and to sleep in for the night. It can also make the people who are getting food happier. You know, you're providing them with food. It generally makes people happier. They are so incredibly grateful for the food that you're giving them, and it's just overall, it's a great experience. I volunteered at Beans Cafe, I think about 2 years ago with my dad, and it was one of the most amazing experiences in my life. It really changed how I look at things in my own life today. One thing that stood out is that we were standing in line, and it was 6:45 in the morning on a Saturday, and we were serving breakfast. And I remember we were serving eggs with, we had some mashed potatoes and some gravy. We had some waffles and we had fruit. And we were set up kind of like a middle school or a high school lunch line where you would stand in a line, you'd go through, you'd have your tray, you'd put it on the little metal thing and you'd slide it down, get your food, and go sit down. And one lady came up to me and she asked me how old I was, and I told her. And I was about 17 at the time. And then she asked me if I was getting paid. I told her no, that I was volunteering with my dad's group in our church. And she just stared at me. And she stared at me for probably 10 seconds. Just stared. And she just started thanking me. And she started sniffling, and there was a couple teardrops that were coming from her eyes, and she told me how grateful she was, and that she couldn't believe that I was 17 years old, I was a teenager, and I was sitting there providing her food, serving her breakfast, and later on in the day going to serve lunch to her as well. And she was just so incredibly grateful that I was doing that for her. And it's such a great feeling when you see that what you're doing is making such a difference in somebody's life, especially something like that. It is incredible, and I think that everybody should experience this at some point in their lives. Another reason that I think you should donate to a food bank or help out in a homeless shelter is it doesn't all go to homeless people. The shelter, even though we call them homeless shelters, they're not just for homeless people, you know. You could have someone in one of your classes or that you work with, you know, that seems perfectly fine at work, who's making money, who seems to be just an average person, but they could be going home at night and not having a meal, or waking up in the morning and not having a meal. So it's pretty incredible that you get to see so many people. And it makes you realize that not everybody who can't afford a meal or doesn't have anywhere to sleep, it's amazing that they can just be someone that you see when you pass by them at work. It's just incredible. And I think it's such a great feeling to be able to help them and to provide a meal for them in a safe, warm environment where they can enjoy it with their other friends and family members. It's definitely a good experience. Children are also one of the biggest concerns of food banks and the homeless shelters. Donating things such as like baby food or foods like that seem like they wouldn't go very far, because we think of homeless people, we think of, here in Alaska, the Native Alaskans that we see that are homeless. We think that that's all the homeless population is, and it's really not. It can be children. It can be children who have somewhere to live, but the family just can't provide for them and has to go to a shelter to get the food for their kids. And it's just a crazy thing. And I think that everybody should donate to food banks and should also volunteer in homeless shelters. It'll make a huge difference in your lives as well as the lives of the people that you help.